once you understand that there are different things that you can do to control your emotional state, and you practice that and play around with it and understand the different, I suppose, parameters for yourself, then you feel more confident to be able to do the things, I think. Certainly, so I wouldn't have been able to do what I'm doing now had I not gone through that Tony Robbins experience. The UPW event I mentioned with Tony Robbins was my first understanding of a different way of operating. So, that whole overused the Matrix 2 pills thing, right? You live in one bubble and then you see the world very differently. You can't go back. That was my experience over 4 days. Some people judge the stuff that Tony does as being, lots of rah-rah and all that. And there is theater to it, right?
Definitely.
But I ended up signing up at that event to every single one of his programs. So the same year, I ended up going to Date with Destiny, which was amazing, and then all the other things that he does, to be in that environment just to kind of probe a little bit more. And once I had some different tools that I'd learned that I had never heard of before, even appreciated, I've just consistently used those tools.
Well, my path is similar from a Tony perspective. I actually found out about him when I was 20 in sales.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and listened to his CDs in my car when I was out selling. Went through Personal Power when I was 20. But then didn't do anything until I was probably 30, early 30s.
Yep.
And went to a UPW and then cascade.
Click.
All of the Tony Robbins stuff for the next year and a half, probably.
Yep.
And one of the things that I also tend to believe is that it's certainly the gaining this new lexicon, this new set of tools that helps you navigate things in a different way. But it's also the frequency of exposure to it, right? So you have all of these different reference points that you've accumulated over time. And if you only have one, right? If you go to one Tony event, then you have one reference point. And if you do it over and over and over for a year, you're going to have a ton.
Yeah.
Right. And then you have all this stuff that you can pull from. And I think endurance is the same way.
Yeah.
So if you do one run, one marathon, okay. But if you do, how many have you done?
67.
And how many ultras?
24.
Yeah. You do that. Your mind goes to a different place when you encounter a challenge, try to solve a problem.
Yeah. And I the way I think about it, which you just spurned the thought of, is it becomes part of your identity because you build it in, you hardwire it. Right. So I'm similar to you. I did read Tony's books when I was in my 20s, and I didn't understand any of them. And of course, when he says put the book down and do the work in the book, I never did any of that stuff. But when you're stuck in a room with 10,000 other people for 4 days, and I was there by myself, didn't take anyone with me, I was just by myself, then you start to understand it and it becomes more hardwired. And that's the only time when I actually started to put into practice the things that he suggested. And then, interestingly, just for people listening, I did everything prescriptively. And if I look what I do now, I don't do hardly any of the stuff in the same way I did when I started. I've chosen the things that work for me, and I'm much more understanding of that. And I think with the running and fitness, I have been exercising at a certain level since I was young, different types of athletics and all sorts. And I often say that that's my identity now. It will never not be my identity. So when I was, put on all that weight in that sort of 12-month period, that was massively out of my identity, which was another shift that forced me to take the action that I took. And I think it was also the shift that caused this, because my mind was spinning so much, it manifested physically with the teeth thing, because I was so out of congruence with my expectation of who I wanted to be. Deep stuff for everyone. But I say a lot on my show that you can't scale a business past the level of your identity. You could argue you can't scale your life past that. But so many business owners and founders that I get the privilege to work with, often it's mindset, it's ability to think differently and bigger. That's the first bridge before they can go and do these exits and all the other crazy technical stuff that I help them with. Yeah.
Well, I think that's precisely why entrepreneurs gravitate towards high-performing athletes, both endurance and otherwise.
That's right.
But you look at, the flavor of the last few years is David Goggins in the endurance.
Love that book.
Right. And in all entrepreneurs do, because the intensity and mindset required to do that has tremendous parallels.
Yes.
In business life.
Yeah. 100%. And that's why I think there is a certain degree of asking more of yourself, right? You know, you've got to put yourself into a position of being uncomfortable, I think, often to find whatever that next level is. And again, that's a parallel back to the running. You know, when I run these days and the events that I do these days, they're less extreme, partly because my body doesn't allow it to be quite as extreme with knees and things like that. But it's more relaxed and focused. And I use it as something that connects me with what I used to do beforehand, but I don't feel the need anymore to push myself to absolute extreme.
Yeah.
Whether that changes in the future, you know, I'm starting to think I need to have a new challenge now. I'm not quite sure what that's going to be, but it's a different way of thinking about it than what it was previously.